Hey folks, welcome to now our second episode of Let's Talk Disc Golf, a show I had kind of put together last week. If you didn't catch that, go ahead and watch it. It kind of introduces the concept of the show, introduces who I am a little bit, and all that jazz. But without further ado, let's get into some of the topics that I wanted to talk about this week. And first and foremost is, of course, the biggest news of all that we had take place this past week, and that is at the time of this recording, Gannon Buhr has officially announced he has left Prodigy Disc, but at the time of me recording this, it has not been announced where he is headed to. I'm sure I'll get really lucky and that'll get announced right as I publish this, of course, and then I'm going to be behind the times, but whatever it is, what it is, and we'll discuss which new company he joins once it gets announced on the next episode or whenever it happens, right? Now, this was a particularly shocking move because Gannon Buhr had only just 4 weeks ago at the time of recording this made a post on his Instagram where he was listed as a member of the Prodigy core team for 2023. And he said, 2023, let's get it. Hashtag Team Prodigy, hashtag Prodigy Disc. And it seemed like from all angles that he would be a member of Prodigy Disc for 2023, and it lined up because that was the final year on his current contract for Prodigy Disc, or, well, I guess that contract being gone now, obviously, as he's left the team. And everything that I had heard from different sources that I have was, yes, we do have Gannon Buhr for 2023 at the very least. Now, you'll remember, if you watched the first episode, that I did call Prodigy Disc as one of the losers of the offseason because I felt like they had missed an opportunity to re-sign Gannon Buhr and go ahead and lock him up for an extended period of time and kind of just re-up his contract, right? And it just makes sense because Gannon Buhr had probably outgrown his contract last year, right? And obviously last year he went on a tear, right? Obviously winning USDGC, obviously being a consistent top 5 contender, and really was just a guy that was doing some big things. And yeah, he had just signed a 2-year extension in 2022, apparently, or 2021, something along those lines. So the point is that his contract was still supposed to run through the rest of 2023. And then when it came to 2024, his contract would be up, and that's whenever he could play his options if he wanted to wait it out. Or, again, there was that option there for Prodigy to re-sign him. Now, I don't know if there was an attempt by Prodigy to re-sign him to an extension or not, and they just couldn't come to an agreement on numbers, and so they decided just to let it ride for 2023, and then they would maybe revisit those conversations for 2024. I don't know if Gannon just didn't want to have any discussions with Prodigy about re-signing and just was going to wait out his contract and then wait until 2024 and then start exploring his options. It's really hard to say because from the outside looking in, we have seen many people leave Prodigy lately, right? You know, you think over on the MPO side, the big one was obviously when Chris Dickerson left and went to Discraft. You also had Thomas Gilbert leave. You know, you had Gavin Babcock recently leave and get announced to Discmania for 2023. Then over on the FPO side, you obviously had Katrina Allen leave for DGA a while back. You had Heather Young just kind of stop playing, which I don't think that was anything really due to Prodigy necessarily. That like she jumped ship to another company. It just seemed like that was like a personal life choice that she had made for whatever reason. Not really sure. And so really you got to a point where the only thing that was really propping up Prodigy was the fact that they still had Kevin Jones, who, while maybe his performance wasn't as up to snuff this past season as it had been in the past, and, you know, maybe he wasn't quite living up to the potential that we know that he has, he was still a big brand name, and he had his own line of disc, and he's a great personality, a very likable guy, very good on content, definitely a good face for that company, a good ambassador for Prodigy in the disc golf space, right? They had that going for them, and they also had the fact that they had some kind of newer faces start rising up this past year, you know, like the breakout season from Isaac Robinson, or some of the results that Alden Harris started putting together, which he had announced an extension with Prodigy recently. And so they kind of had that going for them. And then they had Gannon Buhr, right? You know, the really young up-and-coming superstar that won USDGC, got a major under his belt at the age of 17 years old, the youngest to do it, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. Or he had some type of record for being the youngest to accomplish what he accomplished. And it was one of those things where, you know, Prodigy, to me, needed to find a way to keep Gannon Buhr for as long as possible to kind of keep them afloat and then maybe start revisiting, souping up their FPO team to kind of keep up with some of the other manufacturers in the sport. And again, it seemed like at the very least they were going to keep him for 2023 just based on the social media posts that Gannon had made, based on the fact that over the last couple of weeks, you still see him wearing Prodigy gear and throwing Prodigy disc on all of his social media posts. There didn't really seem to be any indication that he would be going anywhere. And again, everything that I had heard behind the scenes was that, yeah, Prodigy has been for 2023, but there's certainly the chance that he might be out the door. Now, I had heard rumblings that he was potentially looking to leave Prodigy during this offseason, but it just seemed like all signs indicated that just never came to fruition, that whatever other parties that were interested maybe couldn't come to an agreement with Gannon or couldn't come to an agreement with Prodigy. I'm not sure if Gannon has like a buyout in his contract that need to be met. You know, who really knows? Like, contracts in disc golf are really weird, where we've already seen people leave their contracts early, like in the case of Ricky Wysocki when he left the end of a contract early to go to DD, and there was apparently some type of legal stuff that was going on there that I'm not sure if those details ever really came out to the public, so I don't know too much about that one, but I know that was certainly out there. And we have seen some other examples of this also, and this being another one. Now, Simon Lizotte left his Discmania contract early to go to MVP, but allegedly there was a buyout involved in that whole situation from the reports that were out there. Now, whether that's true or not, I don't know 100%, but that's what was kind of reported out there by some media outlets. And so in that situation, it's not quite the same thing because at least there was a buyout being paid. And so it wasn't like a contract which is being voided or ignored. You know, there was kind of something done to kind of allow both parties involved to be satisfied with the situation, or at least let Discmania have something for their loss, so to speak, by having one of the faces of their company leaving them and going over to a different company. So, yeah, this is definitely an intriguing one to see Gannon come out, make this announcement. You know, he had been with Prodigy for 6 years and accomplished a lot with them. He said, you know, from his first Junior World Championship win in 2017 to winning the 2022 USDGC, I've grown a lot as a player and as a person. After a lot of thought, I've made the difficult decision to leave Prodigy. And you have to imagine that him leaving Prodigy must have something to do with finances. I mean, it really does just seem that simple, right? I don't think he had any issues throwing Prodigy plastic. I mean, clearly he was able to perform with it, so that wasn't an issue. He seemed to really look up to Will Schustrick, and there seemed to be like a relationship there, so I don't know that it was something like personal in that regard. But again, obviously Gannon Spur's stock was rising very drastically due to how well he performed last year. And it's worth noting that it wasn't just because he performed super well at USDGC. I mean, obviously that was the big one, right? Winning a major, what that meant to him, what that means to just players in general, how prestigious that event is. Some people even consider it more prestigious than winning a world championship. I don't know. I necessarily vibe that way, but, you know, some people feel that way, and you just know how important it is when that's up for debate, right? But he's currently ranked the number 4 player in the world in UDisc World Rankings. You know, he had that crazy playoff with Drew Gibson in the opening event in the year to take second place at Las Vegas Challenge. And then after that, again, the guy was just placing top 5 all the time. But he came tied for 5th at Champions Cup, the first major of the year. He came 5th at Jonesboro. He winds up winning a silver event at the Santa Cruz Masters Cup. He winds up, you know, taking a 4th place finish at Idlewild. He takes 2nd at the Mid-America Open, 3rd at Ledgestone, and also came 3rd at MVP Open at Maple Hill before going on to win USDGC and then coming 3rd in the Pro Tour Championship. So he had a lot more results backing him than just USDGC. And so therefore his stock was rising. And obviously it is kind of compounded by the fact that he's also quite young. And so therefore he has many years left ahead of him in his career to continue to grow and continue to get better, continue to put more results on the board. And all signs seem to indicate that that's exactly what he will do. He's only seemingly getting better as time goes on. He seems super dedicated to the sport. He's now done with school, so he can commit to disc golf full time. And he seems to be, you know, aware about building his brand and being present on social media by some of the content you've seen him a part of, particularly some of the Alton Harris vlogs and doing some of his own stuff on Instagram, you know, even putting out like tips videos and really paying attention to that side of it as well as his performance side. So clearly he was someone that was bound for a big contract. And I'm assuming that whatever contract he was on with Prodigy prior to this year, that he was, you know, still a part of that term process, you know, as far as like years ago that were left on it. I'm sure he outgrew it, right? It's really that simple. And for whatever reason, he and Prodigy couldn't come to an agreement on extending his contract or renegotiating his contract. And so he's obviously off somewhere else, and he probably signed a huge deal where he's probably getting closer to what his market value truly is. Now, as far as where he is headed, again, maybe that gets officially announced after I release this video, and so I'm kind of behind the times in that regard, and I get unlucky that way. But if I had to guess, I would think that it's either A, Discmania, because they're probably in the market for a player to replace the loss of Simon Lizotte, and if it's true that they got a bunch of buyout money from MVP to allow that transfer to happen, and it also being true that they didn't really spend big during the offseason, you would expect that they would be one that would have a really good position to move and try to make that happen. Now, another company that I could see also trying to make this move would be Latitude 64. That's because, in my opinion, Latitude 64 doesn't really have a marquee MPO player. Like, yes, they have some good MPO players. Don't get me wrong. They have some guys who can go out there and plays very well and represent Latitude well. But they did lose Emerson Keith during this offseason, which is one of their MPO players that could place very well. And again, it seems like most of how Latitude gets represented when it comes to results is from Christian Tatar on the FPO field. Again, there are some guys that can do well. I'm not trying to, downplay them or anything like that, but the point is Latitude 64 doesn't have a guy like DD has with Ricky, or like Discraft has with Paul, or like Discmania has with Eagle, or like what Prodigy did have with Gannon, or what Innova has with, Calvin Heinberg, and the list goes on. Even Westside has Matty O, who's a consistent top 5 contender and sits in the top 10 in the Nugis World Ranking. So it just seems like Latitude 64 would be a company that I could see trying to make a play here, just because it also seems like they're trying to increase their North American presence in general as a company with some of their like recent staff hirings and just some of the things that you kind of see going on. So I could see that being an option, but it does seem like Discmania is a safe bet. Obviously his friend Gavin Babcock just went to Discmania, so there could be something there with that, with the chemistry there. Who really knows? All I know is I'm sure it's going to be a big contract. It's probably going to be a considerable length of time, and I'm sure there's some considerable dollar signs that are behind the deal, and we'll reflect on that whenever that gets announced in a future episode of this. But just wanted to kind of give a little bit of a take on it, and just kind of give a take that I am quite surprised, because I really did feel like if a Gannon Buhr move was going to happen, we would have heard about it way sooner than this. Makes it seem like this happened a little bit last minute, or maybe it was just the wheels turned really slow on it, and maybe it was touch and go whether it was going to happen or not, and that's why Gannon kind of already had come out and announced that he was going to be a part of the court team 4 weeks ago on his Instagram. It does feel like maybe someone came in and made a last-second big swing play for him, which kind of even leads more to the Discmania argument, because they just got the buyout for Simon Lizotte. That deal just got finished going through, and so now they had the money to spend, and so they decided to go out and make a big swing now. I guess I just thought that this move would happen in 2024. I even talked about this on the Smashbox podcast recently when I was a kind of a guest co-host, where we talked about what the big storylines would be for 2023, and I discussed, the 2024 player offseason was going to be a big story, and Gannon Buhr was going to be the leading figure in it. Well, now looks like that's coming a little bit early, of course, with him announcing his departure from Prodigy, and now we just have to see where he winds up moving on to. It'll certainly be interesting to follow. After that, we could talk a little bit about the challenge at Goat Hill, because while this wasn't a Disc Golf Pro Tour event, it was a considerably sized A-tier event that a lot of Disc Golf Pro Tour players kind of played to perhaps get prepared for the opening season event at the Las Vegas Challenge. You definitely had a lot of big names involved in this. You had, Eagle McMahon, you had Albert Tam, you had Luke Sampson, you had Eric Oakley, Gavin Babcock, Cody Kirkland, and several other players rated well above 1,000 that were playing this event. It didn't have like a lot of crazy names in MPO, like it's not like Ricky and Paul and Dickerson and Matteo and some of these other top 10, top 15 players were there, but there were still some pretty notable names that were in attendance at this event. And on the MPO side, it was Eagle McMahon who did wind up winning the event by 4 strokes. I watched some of this coverage post-produce. It was over on Central Coast, and certainly it was worth noting that Eagle started off quite slow, but he did get progressively better each round, and that was indicated by him playing 3 strokes better the second round and then playing a stroke better than his second round, his third round. It did seem like he was a little bit off on the putting green at times, which was a little bit uncharacteristic, but it wasn't anything horrible. Like, he certainly was still hitting some nice putts. it was obvious that he was not throwing the forehand really at all. In fact, I don't remember seeing him throw a single forehand on any of the post-produce covers that I watched, especially off the tee. I'm not sure if maybe he like threw one from a scramble or something that I'm not aware of, or like some type of maybe like touch approach shot or something that I just don't recall. But it was very evident that he's still kind of keeping that forehand away. And I'm not sure if that's something that's going to persist throughout the entire season, or if he was just trying to take it easy since this was an event that was not a part of the Pro Tour. I wanted to make sure he was staying healthy for the Pro Tour when it kicks off soon. Either way, you would think maybe if he was going to start throwing the forehand, he would want to test it at this event a little bit just to kind of get a feel for it. Maybe he still feels a little bit timid about it. It still does leave a lot of questions then about, is he going to be limited this season? Obviously, when he was limited, he still wound up winning the European Open last year in crazy fashion. Again, that was one of the craziest stories. I think when people look back on disc golf history, they'll really, truly have to realize just how nuts of a win that was for Eagle, considering all the circumstances. But, yeah, it was certainly worth noting that it was absent, but he still did win the event. But, again, it wasn't as if he was playing the same, field strength that he'll be seeing at Elite Series events in and out throughout the rest of the year when he plays the Disc Golf Pro Tour. So it is what it is. But does wind up getting the W here. Obviously, we had Jacob Cordes come in second. We had Parker Welk come third. Cody Kirkland came in fourth. And then Brady Oak, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that, tied for fifth with Albert Tom. Some other notable names that were involved in this was Eric Oakley wound up taking 8th place, so a pretty good result for him, as I know that he was trying to really pick things up from last year. Then you got Luke Sampson came in the top 10 along with Zach Arlinghouse, so another couple of names you'd recognize there. And kind of scrolling through, you had Nick Newton come in 12th, Jackie Chen came in 14th. Just some notable names I'm trying to pick out here. Gavin Babcock wound up coming 25th, so had a little bit of a struggle, but it was maybe one of his first events with the new Discmania bag. And that's kind of the main names that really jump off the page for me. Now, over on the FPO side, we had Maria Oliva win the event by 2 strokes over Jennifer Allen. She's actually been really active already in 2023. She's played 4 events prior to the Pro Tour. She had come second at the La Mirada Open, actually losing to Owen Scoggins in that situation. Then she came second at the Shelley Sharp event, actually losing to Jennifer Allen by a pretty considerable margin. It was really not even close. Like, she got smashed in that event. But, of course, Maria was getting used to a new bag, obviously moving from Innova to now playing for Infinite and Thought Space and with the whole open bag and all that jazz. And I'm sure she's getting used to a lot of new plastic. But she was able to, I guess, get some revenge on Jennifer Allen, so to speak, heads up. After losing to her at Shelley Sharp, winning this one by 2 strokes. And it really did come down to the final round, right? I mean, they were pretty close. Jennifer Allen actually had a 3-stroke lead over Maria after the first round was over. She extended that lead to 4 strokes by the time the second round was over. So Maria, being 4 strokes behind going into the final round, winds up in the third round shooting a 4 under par, while Jennifer Allen shot a 2 over par. And it really did come down to the final stretch. It came down to basically holes 12 through 18, where she birdied out 6 of the last 7 holes and had a bogey on hole 16 to ultimately come up with the win. So really came up clutch down the stretch to overcome a 4-stroke deficit to beat Jennifer Allen. Owen Scoggins comes in third, 8 strokes behind Jennifer Allen. That was really kind of the main names from the FPO field at this event. And so figured I would kind of mention the challenge at Goat Hill and kind of talk about some results from that, as that was, a decent-sized A-tier leading into the Disc Golf Pro Tour kicking off. And speaking of the Disc Golf Pro Tour kicking off, we do have the All-Star event coming up. Of course, on the MPO side, you got Team Ricky, which is Ricky Wysocki, Gannon Buhr, which will be interesting because I will be curious to see if a new sponsor gets announced before the All-Star event happens, or if he just shows up throwing whatever the heck he wants, or if he shows up and just is wearing his new sponsor stuff, and that's how we find out who he's sponsored by, or if he's still throwing Prodigy stuff for right now, although that would be cutting it pretty close to Vegas to still be throwing Prodigy stuff. That wouldn't give him a whole lot of time to get used to a new bag. If he was, I'm not really sure what's going on, so that's going to be interesting. Also on the Ricky team will be Matty O, James Conrad, Kyle Klein, and Simon Lazat. And then over on Team Paul, you have Kevin Jones, Chris Dickerson, Joel Freeman, Calvin Heimberg, Isaac Robinson, and Paul Macbeth. Then over on the FPO side of things, you have Team Katrina, which has Katrina Allen, Evelina Salonen, Alexis Mandahano, Sarah Hokum, Henna Blomroos, and Jennifer Allen. And then for Team Own, we have Kat Mersch, Ella Hansen, Holland Handley, Missy Gannon, Maria Oliva, and, of course, Owen Scoggins. And just kind of talking about the players really quick, I mean, for MPO, you really have pretty much all of the top players involved in this event, with the exception of Eagle McMahon. Pretty much everyone else, and maybe Nicholas Antela, who's currently ranked number 9 in the UDIS World Rankings, so I'm sure with him coming over from Europe, it might have been tough for him to come that much earlier than the first Pro Tour event he wants to attend. So I'm sure that played into it. But other than that, you pretty much have the entire top 10 there. Again, besides Eagle and besides Niklas. And yeah, you don't have Corey Ellis and, AB and Chris Clemens and maybe a couple other like top 20 guys you might have wanted to see there. But for the most part, you have a pretty good field of MPO players participating in the All-Stars. And of course, the 2 captains. I mean, a classic rivalry, isn't it? Ricky Wysocki versus Paul Macbeth. So I actually really think that the way the MPO shapes up is actually quite nice as far as who winds up being at this event. Now, as far as FPO goes, on the one hand, I can't fault it because obviously Kristen Tatar is injured, and so is Valerie Mandahano. So that really kind of takes out, 2 top 15 players in FPO from being able to attend due to that whole situation. So I completely understand that, of course. But you still have several other players. I think really you have everyone else from the UDIS top 5 there outside of Kristen Tatar, which again is not there due to injury. Obviously, Paige Pierce is missing, being number 6 in the UDIS World Rankings, and so that is, tough. Also, Haley King, not a part of the event either. So there's a couple there. Also not seeing Macy Vela Diaz not being there, but of course, you have Ella, you have Kat. So you still have quite a few top 20 players. In fact, I think everyone at the All-Star event is a top 20 player on the UDIS World Rankings with the exception of Alexis Mandahano. So overall, pretty solid rosters, I think, for both MPO and FPO. Also, when it comes to the format of the All-Star event, they have a putting contest where the winning team gets 1 point. There's 6 stations. You have a 20-foot elevated putt, a 25-footer, a 25-footer obstructed, a 33-footer, a 33-footer obstructed, a 45-footer, and then a bonus station, a 66-footer. And you get 5 putts at all stations except for the 66-footer where you only get 1 putt. And of course, you get so many points based on the difficulty of the station. It goes from 1 point for the first 2 stations to 2 points for the next 2, and then 3 points for the next 2, and then, of course, 5 points for the bonus station. And, overall, I think having a putting contest at an All-Star event makes sense. I think having ones that force people to straddle out or deal with an obstacle is a nice way to add a twist to it, because that is something you're going to face on tour time and time again, rather than just them having open putts from just different distances. That would be kind of boring. So, overall, I think it's a cool event to have. It's great to have a skills competition in general. Now, for the shot shaping and accuracy competition, you get 3 throws from, it looks like 5 different stations, and you get, a total of so many points per station, I guess. I'm not really sure how that works. You're going to have a Mando right that you have to play at 1 point, a Mando left. Then you're going to have a double Mando you have to play in between. Then you're going to have a Mando low that you have to throw over. And then you're going to have a Mando high that you're going to have to play under with some type of roller, perhaps, or like a low laser beam shot. And then the Mando low would maybe for some type of overhand shot or grenade or spike hyzer or something like that. So basically, it's a contest that forces you to throw a variety of different shot shapes and have to, fulfill certain Mando obligations. And I'll be curious to see what it looks like when it actually happens. I remember last year they just kind of used like this thing that almost created like this like tic-tac-toe board looking thing just by using like straps or tape or whatever, that they just had to kind of just go through those different squares to count. And then it was just, about getting as close to a basket as you possibly could. So I actually don't mind this. I think it's kind of neat. It would be cool to see if you could develop the shot shaping accuracy competition even further at some point, to maybe just having them tee off from certain places and try to hit certain landing zones. And, the closer you are to the center, the bullseye, you get so many points. And then if you're in one of the outer rings, you get less points, kind of something like you would see at like Top Golf or something like that, I guess. Or Um, something that I've seen at other disc golf content, I feel like at some point where you get so many points, just, what circle you land inside. So I think that would be kind of a cool way to do it, where you combine maybe Mandos with just trying to hit circle 1 or circle 2 or bullseye from so many feet away or something like that. I think some kind of combination of those factors might make shot shaping and accuracy even more interesting. But again, I have to kind of see how they actually have this set up to see if this is cool or not. Then, of course, you have a distance competition. You got to have a distance competition. In this situation, it's you keep your biggest throw, you get 6 attempts, and obviously you have to stay in some sort of boundaries. If you go OB, the throw doesn't count. And so all in all, really cool to see a skills competition like this at All-Stars, and obviously really cool to see this collection of players. Yeah, I think it's a good collection of players. Now, after that, after the first day, then you go into a doubles competition, and then the final day is a singles competition. And here's where I do kind of wish All-Stars would make a bit of a pivot, because we get to see singles all the time and stroke play all the time throughout the course of the season. So I feel like All-Stars is an opportunity to really get away from that in singles. I don't mind having doubles, because we really don't see doubles other than like Worlds, and maybe like 1 or 2 other events throughout the course of the year. And even then, it doesn't really get highlighted very much. So I don't mind doubles, especially if you kind of alternated between best shot, worst shot, alternate shot, best score, things that nature to kind of spice it up. Like maybe so many holes you play best shot, so many holes you play a worst shot, so many holes you play alternate shot, kind of mix it up. Again, because we don't see doubles that much. So I'm totally fine with that. But for singles, I think it'd be cool if we had more of like match play or something like that, because we don't see match play very often. We have a match play championship, and then there was at one point consideration for a match play major, but everyone really kind of spoke against that quite heavily, and that wound up going by the wayside, which it makes sense. Maybe match play is not the best idea for a major. But outside of the match play championship, we don't see match play with our top pros. And so I think the All-Star event is a perfect opportunity to do that. It would be a little bit refreshing to have something new, something different than just singles stroke play. So I feel like that was a missed opportunity. I think the skills competitions are great. I think doubles is great. But for singles, let's do some match play or something. Let's spice it up a little bit, Also, this brings up kind of the debate again about whether or not All-Stars is getting the most out of the product. What I mean by that is this really the best way we can do an All-Star event? Certainly it seems like they got pretty much the best collection of players you could hope for, especially considering some of the injuries that are out there on the FPO side of things. I mean, you're not missing too many crazy names. Again, I think for MPO, the biggest one that you're missing was Eagle, and then for FPO, the biggest one you're missing is Page. And again, with the situation with Valerie Manahado and Kristen Starr being injured, it's understandable they can't be there. I mean, they're not even going to start their season until later on because of that. So that's not the issue. I think the issue can maybe be timing. I think it coming preseason makes it kind of weird, because it's like you don't even really know who the All-Stars are at that point, unless you're just going off of the world ranking that got built from the previous year. Which I guess that's one way to do it, but I don't know. It just feels like kind of odd. Like I feel like the All-Star event should be some type of mid-season break event like we see in other sports, or maybe some type of end-of-season event, and more of like a vacation for the players after the season's over or something like that. And then maybe you can use that opportunity to do some like really cool content, or really like fun, quirky games, or, things to get to know the players better, or, something along those lines that just kind of really creates a new type of content altogether. I feel like it being a preseason event just seems weird. Again, me personally, I think it'd be a cool mid-season break event, although you'd have to really tinker with the schedule to be able to fit it in that way. And then maybe some people rather would just take a break and rest. You got to think about the wear and tear of the course of the season, which is kind of another thing, because, now you're risking injury playing an event before the season even starts. I know that it's probably minimal risk, but I mean, some of these guys are going to be playing the distance competition, and that does put you at risk of injury if you're trying to do these crazy big throws to get distance. So I do wonder, like I said, if maybe some type of mid-season break event would make it fit a little bit better, and that way you would kind of have All-Stars to really truly choose from the current year, because you would have half a season of play having already taken place, and so you kind of know who your top players are from the first half of the season to invite to All-Stars. Or, like I said, an in-season event that can be more of a vacation to celebrate the end of the season, and then you truly know who your best players are from throughout the whole course of the year to invite to All-Stars. So maybe just some things to think about as far as ways to improve it. Just my opinion is maybe different scheduling, and then maybe getting away from the singles stroke play as being a part of it and putting something else in there that's new and different and fun. And that's just kind of my take on it. But overall, I'll certainly, check it out and look forward to it. Outside of that, there really isn't much else that I kind of wanted to hit on this episode, or because I'm kind of doing this weekly. I think the big story really was the whole Gannon Buhr news, and we're still waiting to hear where he's headed. Obviously, All-Stars is kind of, around the corner, and then right after that, we're underway for the Disc Golf Pro Tour season for 2023. I think the only other really news that came out was some of the new media plan from the Disc Golf Pro Tour about how they were switching from showing the final round live on YouTube to now streaming the first round live for free on YouTube. I think the price also slightly increased, and that is a pretty big pivot to go from showing the final round for free, which is the most important round, the round that most people want to watch, to now just showing the first round. But it's also smarter from the business side if you Disc Golf Pro Tour, because then you kind of get to hook people in by letting them watch the first round for free, and you hopefully use that to convert them into a subscriber because now they want to watch the rest of the tournament. So from a business perspective, I'm actually surprised that the Disc Golf Pro Tour didn't do this sooner. I think it was actually quite generous of them to be giving away the final round for free for so long. So I understand the pivot. Again, I just thought it would have come sooner. Now, I'll be curious to see how this impacts their subscriber count going forward. I'll be curious to see how the community reacts to this. But at the end of the day, their model is a paid subscription model. And so as long as they're going to stick with that model, they have to do what they think is best to help grow that model. And certainly I think this change is going to help that. I think that makes the most sense. Again, I'm surprised it didn't happen sooner. Now, there was also some other weird language in the press release about potentially streaming elsewhere besides YouTube and DGN. And so it makes me wonder if they're trying to get their round streamed somewhere else, like whether that be some other subscription service or maybe like a Twitch, or like, I don't know. Like, there just seemed to be like some language that seemed to leave a door open for potentially seeing it streamed somewhere else. And I don't know if that would be paid or for free. Again, I think it's also about increasing the value of your subscription. If you are a DGN subscriber, you're getting more value for that subscription now if you're getting the more important rounds on that service as a paid service, as opposed to, you getting the early rounds for a paid service and then the final round is for free, which is the most important round. And, I feel like DGN, or the Disc Golf Pro Tour with DGN, has been trying to figure out ways to make your DGN subscription more valuable, whether that be putting out more content behind the DGN paywall. I do kind of get the back and forth there about that, and I'll be curious to see how people react to it and all that good stuff. But anyway, folks, hope you enjoyed this episode of Let's Talk Disc Golf. Next time around, I'd love to do a little bit of a Q&A. So in the comments below, if you'd like to post a question for me to answer in the next episode, go ahead and do that. Also, make sure that you subscribe. You also can follow all my social media accounts to keep up to date on new content coming out here on the channel, or just what I'm up to in general in the disc golf world and in the esports world. And yeah, just maybe let me know what you're thinking about the show in the comments below as well. Obviously, you subscribing and following helps me out quite a lot. It helps the channel grow. We have grown quite a lot recently. I think a lot of that was due to having a couple of appearances on the debate night show over at Foundation. I feel like that brought a lot of new eyeballs over here. And we're nearing that 1,000 subscriber mark. So still going to keep pushing by putting out more and more content like this, like the tournament stuff. Like I just released a video actually here a day or two ago now of me playing a tournament. And I got some more tournaments coming up that I'll be filming. And then just, some of my other disc reviews and other casual round content will be flowing. So definitely follow and subscribe for all that, and catch you next time.